Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. Today we'll take a closer look at the new industrial policy in the offing. The government will soon unveil a new industrial policy to link domestic industry with the global supply chain. The draft industrial policy was floated by the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion. The aim is to create jobs over the next 2 decades, promote foreign technology transfer and attract $100 billion FDI annually. This will be the third industrial policy drafted in independent India. The first was announced in 1956 and the second in 1991. And for deeper insights, I'm joined by Dr. Subhash Chandra Pandey, Special Secretary and Financial Advisor, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Ms. Deepshikha, Senior Editor, The Economic Times, and Mr. Santosh Tiwari, Senior Director, FICCI. Welcome to Sabha Television, all of you. Coming to you, Dr. Pandey, first of all. Since the last independent policy that was announced, industrial policy, in the year 1991, that was against the backdrop of balance of payment crisis. Since then, India has transformed into one of the fastest growing economies of the world. Now, this reform is expected to overhaul the industrial policy. There have been interministerial discussions. When do we see it in the public domain and when do you take it to the cabinet?
Very soon, I would say. It is at an advanced stage of consultations and fine-tuning. Many rounds of discussions have taken place with industrial bodies, even with the state government workshops at various locations. Honorable Minister has taken. So I can say that it is a pretty advanced stage, fine-tuning.
Right. Mr. Tiwari, the fact that it will subsume the national manufacturing policy, how would this policy make India as a manufacturing hub and also push the Make in India initiative?
You said that the critical aspect of this policy would be jobs and also linking of domestic industry with the global industry. But the basic aspect in today's industrial history of India is that you have to become more competitive. So the crux of this policy would be how you make India more competitive. And competitiveness requires two things, improvement in two things. One is, what is your cost of funds? How do you improve industry's investment appetites fulfillment? That has two aspects. One is how you ease availability of credit to the industry through your domestic means like banks, etc. To that extent, government is doing its bit. The situation had been bad in last few years, but it's now improving. Another very important aspect which this industrial policy will take care of is bringing in investment from outside. Like if you want to have a growth or if you want to have an industrial policy which gives you a growth of 8% plus GDP growth, in next 20 years in a sustained manner, then you need to have $100 billion investment per year, FDI.
Right.
How will that come? This will only come when you make your industry competitive. In today's world, Indian industry is not that competitive in global arena. This industrial policy has to be different in that context from 1991 policy. How do you do that? The most important thing which this industrial policy looks at is creating a window, a platform like GST. In this country's economic reform, GST is one of the most critical reforms, not only in the sense that it has integrated your indirect tax structure throughout the country, but in the sense that for the first time you have an integrated platform which has states and center together, sitting at one place, taking decisions which impacts industry across the country and people across the country. Now this industrial policy also looks at creating such a window where at one platform you will be having states and center together taking decisions which will help industry coming through. Now what will that window do? That window will ease your pressures on central government as far as doing reforms which is very important for the industry in areas like labor, like land leasing, etc.
Yes.
In taxation, although indirect tax structure has been overhauled throughout the country through GST, there is a need to overhaul again the direct tax structure. So you need to come with a new direct taxes code which will typically reduce industry's burden of income taxation. The government in the past has announced that the income tax rate or the corporate tax rate for industry will be reduced from 30 to 25%. For small scale sector, etc. companies, this has been done. But the large part of the industry which contributes to 90% or more than 90% of the profits of this country, the income tax rate or the corporate tax rate still is 30%. That has to go down. So you have to look in totality about this policy when you say that this industrial policy will be changing the whole structure, the domain and the projection of Indian industry from domestic to international. So this 360-degree change has to be looked at when you talk about this industrial policy.
Right. Madam, we are talking about 360-degree change. Now, specifically, if I talk about manufacturing, how can this policy make use of emerging technologies like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence or robotics to propel advanced manufacturing?
So if you actually see, this government has unveiled several initiatives, Startup India, and there has been a lot of focus on technology-based industry, services sector. Now, what this policy seeks to do is create this framework wherein all sort of inputs, all sort of ideas which are there, all sort of regulations, they can be, driven towards one goal. So, use of artificial intelligence to boost manufacturing. It'll bring about marriage of, old economy and the new economy, bringing them together on one platform. So how well can it be used? So this policy is essentially going to look at these aspects and bring about some sort of a framework wherein all these things, can actually drive country's economy forward.
Right. Dr. Pandey, the ministry is also mulling setting up health clinics for revival of MSMEs. Can you shed more light on that?
This kind of intervention is just one of the very many, the whole package for reviving the micro and small SME. As you know, recently Prime Minister announced a slew of measures to help boost the credit flow, and so this is part of the continuation of the process, because the MSMEs play a very vital part in both employment generation, export and production there. And it is, as Mr. Tiwari very correctly mentioned, the competitiveness is the key. To make this, there has to be greater technology infusion in MSMEs and addressing their problems, which is also a subset of the broader reform of ease of doing business. So when we talk of these clinics, it is looking into the specific problems of sick or incipient sick MSMEs and to address their problems.
Right. Yeah. Mr. Tiwari, of course, you represent the industry body. Now, India has bagged the 77th position in World Bank's Ease of Doing Business rankings, making it the only country securing among top 10 countries, improving consistently for second consecutive year. How can this policy further cut red tape and unnecessary regulations?
Prior to going there, I mentioned one thing in terms of technology adoption. Now, this policy has another critical element of technology adoption. Technology adoption has two aspects. One is technology adoption from outside. So when FDI comes, technology comes. So technology transfer is going to be an important aspect of this industrial policy. Another very important part which India has been lacking and is still lacking in a big way is how your research and development in universities, in research and development labs, they go to industry, and industry research combination comes out as a win-win model. Now, in all developed countries, either you take US or any other country, there the research and development process and industry combination has come out with great products, and they have yielded great value not only for the industry, economy, consumers, but also for the country. Now, in India, that has not happened, that everybody knows. Now, this policy aims to tackle that also. This policy has an aspect of linking industry, research, R&D, wherever it is happening, to industry's investment. Once you create a model in next 5 years or 10 years, a robust model of our research and development getting into industry and then combining together both of them, and then like in other countries, in developed countries, if you come up with a model where domestic R&D plus industry investment, whether it is from FDI or from coming from internally, it creates a model where you have your own technology getting into industry investment and getting into for consumers. This is one. So you have to change your IPR regime also for that.
Exactly.
Intellectual property regime. You have to make it much easier. Anybody who is doing R&D in any university, if one student is developing some technological thing, you know, it must get through those IPR regimes where he or she or that researcher can get easily the intellectual property for whatever he is developing, and then that can go to industry. Industry will come to him or her or that university, and then that model can be developed. That is lagging. So this policy aims to fill this gap.
I'll take that question to you. How can this policy revamp the IPR regime to foster innovation?
So if you see the IPR regime in the country, if you look at the current regime, I mean, experts, and if you talk to the industry, they always complain that it sort of doesn't encourage IPR creation. So what this policy is seeking to do is create a liberal regime for IPR, wherein not just the innovator, the academia where the innovator is, and the industry both become stakeholder in the whole process. So everybody is getting some share of that IPR creation, the value that IPR entails. So it is looking at changing, revamping the whole IPR framework, having a more liberal view of the IPR regime. So essentially, both, all three stakeholders, all three will become partners in this whole process. The innovator, the academia where, or the institution, the R&D lab where the innovator is, and also the industry. So all three have a stake in the whole system.
Right. Dr. Pandey, how can this policy harness private investment for research and development?
Actually, we have come a long way from the days Newton discovered gravity from falling apple. The science and technology has made such rapid advances that it is increasingly, it requires very high degree of investment in the R&D infrastructure. So it is not peripheral innovation that will help the industry become competitive. It is, as was mentioned about the IPR regime, it is some of the delays, we are addressing it aggressively, and the delays are coming year after year down in terms of a grant of patents. But much more is the problem about the already patented technologies. How do we commercialize them? I'm saying. So the R&D commercialization wherever it requires access to key strategic materials or processes, which require huge investment, and it is in those areas where the patents commercialization is lacking. So the policy may be encouraging commercialization by connecting the IP creators, the R&D institutions, and the industry. And of particular importance is the public funded R&D institutions, which have created in the past a huge amount of IPR, which has not yet gone to market.
Right.
So the policy can address that.
That's a very pertinent point that you're making, sir. So now we will slip into a short break. Stay tuned, lots more on the other side.
Watch the special coverage of the 50th edition of Prime Minister's Mann Ki Baat all week on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching Policy Watch, and the discussion on the new industrial policy continues. Deepshikha ji, all of us have been talking about the fourth industrial revolution and how it will change the nature of jobs because of fusion of technology. How can this policy combat the challenges of fourth industrial revolution and also reap the benefits of it?
See, the way one sees how industry is sort of panning out, there's a whole churn happening in the industry with the technology coming in. There's a whole lot of disruption happening. For example, your payment systems have made it so easy for you to just pay from your mobile. You don't need to go to the ATM, carry cash, and so on. So now, going forward, your ATMs become redundant. Now, or even on, say, in ticketing, there has been, you don't need a human interface. And the same is happening in the manufacturing side, wherein, robotics, artificial intelligence is replacing human interface.
Right.
So how do you sort of manage this change, create jobs, as also boost industry, So this policy is looking at, innovation is one of the key pillars of this policy. So how do you, look at innovation while also look at, creating jobs, boosting manufacturing in the country? There have been a number of measures to boost manufacturing till now. And this policy will sort of complement those measures by, bringing all of them together under this overarching, sort of a framework.
I'll take that to you, Mr. Tiwari. How can this policy corroborate the fourth industrial revolution?
See, as far as fourth industrial revolution is concerned, this will not come through big industry. And India will be a major player in this fourth industrial revolution through its MSME sector. But although we have done in last few years so many things for medium and small sector industries, the sad story is that still there is a huge gap to be filled. So this policy looks at filling those gaps in two aspects. One is, what does MSME need today? It does need easy investment or easy funds, availability of easy funds. It does need ease of doing business. It does need government support in terms of not having any problem in starting business and dealing with the business. But the most important thing which the medium and small sector industry needs today in India is a proper framework where when you come out to do business, your intellectual quality, your intellectual input, your product gets into the business domain quickly, and then there is a support model to take that business domain, scale up that business model. Startups and small and medium sector industries have been there for quite so many years in the country. Now the time now is to scale up. So how this policy allows your MSME sector and also your startups to scale up and become big will show how much you have contribution in this fourth industrial revolution. But one thing is very certain, that India's contribution to fourth industrial revolution has to come from small sector industries, small industries, startups. And for that, these 2-3 critical things are very, very important. One, how you improve your intellectual domain, how you support your intellectual domain to develop products which comes into industry, and when it comes to industry, how it scales up. So the 3 aspects which I mentioned earlier, that is cost of funding, that is government support, that is ease of doing business, those are prerequisites. Those you have to. But this industrial policy has to look at how you scale up the availability of intellectual domain, intellectual input in today's MSMEs, and also how you help your MSMEs and startup industries to scale up their products. Even if that is a small product like your some art, culture, which some company is developing.
Exactly.
So product is more important, and how you allow these small sector players, small players to become big. That is what this industrial policy should do.
That is the key you're saying. Dr. Pandey, now that we are talking about MSMEs and startups, the government has gone on record to say that this policy will enable entrepreneurs to make use of technology and also improve efficiency. What is it that this policy will offer to the budding entrepreneurs and the aspiring entrepreneurs?
See, the government in its G2B interface, and they vocalize through the policy statement like this, provides an enabling environment. The actual actions have to be taken by the economic agents out there. So, instead of a change of a mindset from a controller to facilitator, that itself is what has brought us from 142 rank to 77 rank in those years. and that this process is only going to be accelerated. So, where the government acts as a facilitator by creating institutional mechanisms to ease the pain of conducting business, expanding business, absorbing technology. So, the last policy, as you say, 91 when see the two major changes that have taken place is one is the demographic change,
Right.
and the technology change. And that has changed the context requiring for a special action. The technology is a major disruptor. It offers challenges, opportunities, challenges in terms of a populous country like ours, the large scale disruption in terms of the nature of job changes. So, a whole new set of skill sets are required, and to impart those skills to prepare our workforce for these challenges is what is the policy seeks to address. This we talked about Industrial 4.0. These developments, when they started in developed countries, they have started as an attempt to claw back the jobs lost to wage arbitrage to developing countries. So, our situation is that like in many other areas, we have skipped some stages by faster adoption of technology. So, Digital India, the way aggressively it is being promoted, it will enable us to make that technology jump for an adoption of Industry 4.0 also. So, let us not forget that 2/3 of our GDP is the consumption. Ours is a consumption driven economy, and ours is a large domestic market. So, this technology offers not just large scale production of a single item, replicating it, but customizing and variety, which to such a market it offers immense economic opportunity. So, through these different ways of creating an enabling environment, the policy can certainly help the industry.
Right. Deepshikha, Dr. Pandey is mentioning about implementation of the policy through economic agents. Now, how can the central government and the state governments be on the same page on several key issues like labour laws, taxation, land leasing, for the perfect implementation of this crucial policy?
See, I just wanted to add to what Dr. Pandey said. You see the backdrop in which this policy is coming out. India, if you compare it with its neighbors, even a small country like Vietnam, it has really given us a run in manufacturing sector. It's really attracted a lot of investments in manufacturing. Now, this policy will actually subsume the national manufacturing policy. Our tariffs are way lower now, so there is no protection for the domestic industry. So, you only need a very competitive environment for investment to actually flourish in this country. There are no barriers per se to protect them from any onslaught of imports. So, this policy is essentially trying to bring about competitiveness in the industry, as also, bringing it on par with its competitors outside, so that the domestic industry does not have to suffer this onslaught of imports. So that was the point which I just wanted to add to that. And to your point on
the implementation of the policy
aspect. So in GST, we've actually seen this whole coordination between the center and the states. The GST Council has given this, a new platform of engagement for center and state governments to actually come together and sort of do away all the hurdles that are there, all the challenges which are there. And it's worked very well. And this policy attempts to create a similar structure wherein states and the center can actually collaborate and work towards, doing away all the difficulties. And if you actually see in ease of doing business, states are competing with each other.
Exactly.
To remove hurdles to investments. So this body, this council, or this would be, we don't know the exact details of what the structure is going to be like, but it would be something like the GST Council, an empowered council, which will be able to take decisions. and states would be following those policy. Current issue which we face is, it's policies are not uniform across states. So this body would be able to sort of bring about that change.
Right. Mr. Tiwari, power tariff has to be made competitive to unleash the real potential of our industrial units. What could be the roadmap for it?
I've explained this implementation thing to you through 3 examples.
Yes.
And that should make clear, how critical is this implementation body. First, you mentioned power tariff. Today, Electricity Act was 2003. But still, most critical part of the Electricity Act is still pending, open access or whatever it is. It has come, but here, there, not everywhere. The tariffs have not gone down. It was part of reform. For more than a decade, we have been trying that states reduce power tariffs. But why are power tariffs high? Because you have different kind of tariffs for consumers, for agriculture, for industry, and industry is paying maximum tariff. Now, if you want to boost your industry, you have to at least allow them to have tariff, which helps them do better. But for them, the tariff is much higher. How do you do that? Center has not been able to impose lower tariffs on states. So if there is a body where states and center are coming together, like the way they came together in GST, terms of GST, come together and decide that no, we need to basically come to a situation, we need to devise a situation where for industry also we must have our tariff structure designed in a manner where the state is not losing money, but industry is also not paying for agriculture or for consumers. Industry is paying for what it is consuming. It is not subsidizing them. This is one. Other 2 areas, which will explain how this body will help in improving ease of doing business scenario is labor law reforms. Today, what have you done? At the central level, you have not been able to clear your labor law reforms and land leasing or land reforms. But what has Rajasthan done? Rajasthan has done labor reforms. And how have they done? They have used a window which is called presidential assent window. Their assembly, Rajasthan assembly, passed the labor law changes, and then through center they have just implemented the labor laws. But that has not happened in other states. Madhya Pradesh is trying for it, Haryana is trying for it. This is not happening. If you have a platform where all the states discuss that there has to be a model where land law reforms can happen.
Probably Dr. Pandey can answer that. What is the framework to rationalize these laws?
You see, industry would always look at the environmental laws or labor laws as a burden. I must say that a policy statement is always about balancing conflicting interests. We want inclusive and sustainable growth, a clean growth. So, and for that reason, if the consumers have to be readied for higher prices, we have to, through policy, create that kind of environment.
Right.
So labor laws, in fact, the median labor productivity is low and affects competitiveness. That is the common refrain, we know it. But low productivity is not just the labor that is responsible. There is a host of other situations where the working condition, health, and other things that create the working tools and workspace requirement. So, if simply looking at a number or wages or the type of regulation may not be. So, a balance has to be whether the workers also, their interests are taken care of, their genuine welfare is taken care of, and they are properly skilled and their productivity increases.
Right, absolutely. So on that note, we'll wrap up this show. So clearly this policy holds huge potential to boost economic growth. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.